Average gas prices are back above $4 a gallon nationwide, and families are grappling with the reality of redirecting funds meant for other things or adapting in other ways to manage the change. Joining us for insight on how you can best weather this phase is Lawrence Sprung, founder of Mitlin Financial and the author of Financial Planning Made Personal. Good morning, Lawrence. What are people feeling right now, and how is spending impacted specifically by these changes to gas prices?
Yeah, I mean, this isn't just a gas story. It's really a cost of living story because when gas goes up, families feel it fast because it's immediate. Driving is really not optional for most people, and it's just one more hit on the budget that, in current times seems to be already stretched to some degree.
And you're saying even when people may be feeling strapped for cash, you should still make an effort to save. It sounds counterintuitive, but I know there's strategy there. Walk us through it.
Yeah, so I think you have to just be a little bit more mindful. If the gas costs are really hitting your budget hard, be a little bit more mindful in terms of those trips that you're going to be taking out of the house. If you have multiple trips, rather than going back and forth and doing multiple trips during the week, try to consolidate them together to, bring them more together to hopefully save on that gas expense. And then, as you make those savings, be mindful to save for retirement, for your emergency fund, because remember, this will not be the last time that we see gas prices spike. Eventually they will go back down, and we will be in another gasoline shock at some point in the future. The important part is to plan for it and have the emergency fund to withstand some of these shocks that we see over the course of time.
Yeah, it seems in some way to be a good opportunity to implement some of the lessons from our grandparents in terms of spending and saving. How do you define an emergency worth spending on, and how would you enforce that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think you have to look at it. Each family has to look at it on their own. That's not really necessarily for me to judge. But at a high level, I would say like going on vacation is not an emergency. Having a problem with your roof, or having a situation where you're not able to put groceries on the table because you didn't have enough income during the week. Or as we're talking about today, you need to put money in the tank or gas in the tank, I should say, to get to work. And whatever reason you didn't have enough income the week before, that's where an emergency fund, or the month before, that's where an emergency fund can come in really helpful.
And ideally, more is better, of course, but what's perhaps in terms of proportions or otherwise, what's an ideal amount for an emergency fund?
So, I mean, that ranges, I think, depending upon what your role is. If you're a W-2 employee, for example, and, you're relatively confident that you can get a new job immediately if you need to find new work, because that's another emergency, right? Losing your employment could be the biggest threat to your income. You want to make sure that you have at least 3 to 6 months, at least 3 months, maybe 6 months, depending upon what your risk tolerance is for that. And then if you're somebody who's self-employed or an independent contractor where you're not necessarily getting that W-2 and it's really relying upon your shoulders, you want to be maybe a little bit more of a cushion just in case business slows down, maybe 6 to 12 months. But really is just finding the sweet spot where you feel comfortable and know that if things go sideways and there is an emergency, you'll have those funds available to take care of it.
And when things are in flux in the economy or otherwise, spending, is needs of spending are more unpredictable. It's even more important to keep track of your financial goals and where you are along the way there. What do you suggest for how people can make sure they're on the path to achieving their financial goals?
Yeah, I mean, when things are going awry, I think it's more important to make sure that you're staying more closely to that budget so that you're not overspending. That would be the first thing that I would start taking a hard look at, right? If you're feeling a lot of pressure when you go to fill up at the pump, that it's really straining your budget, I think that's a great time. I mean, you really should do it in advance, but this is really an eye-opening time to take a look at what monies you have coming in, what monies you have going out, and really looking at it through a lens of, is this spending bringing me joy? And if not, or is it necessary? And if not, eliminate it to tighten up that budget during this time. And then secondarily, start looking at where you are on track or off track with regards to those goals. And the important thing is, if you have this budget in place as you enter these uncertain periods of time, like high gasoline prices, high food prices, things like that, you'll be in a better position to absorb things as they come, rather than trying to be reactionary as they come and trying to fix it in that moment. It's always what's the saying? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, and I think that's really where the budget comes in.
Certainly. And just in our last 30 seconds, I love your focus on really living a life of joy and allowing your finances to support that. Of course, within a family constellation, people will have different things that bring joy to them and cost different amounts of money. How do you suggest just navigating that when you're really assessing a budget?
Yeah, I mean, you really have to look at it. I mean, you look at, we see some families that look at things, and to us, it may not be a joyful thing. Like, for instance, having a Netflix subscription, or, having other subscriptions or things like that. To me, it may not mean anything, but to them, they may really get a lot of joy and spend time, their free time watching movies, for example. So I think you have to look at that and see what is really bringing you joy and what's not. And then once you identify those things that are bringing you joy, make sure that they can fit in your budget where you're at. And if not, then you may have to think about paring back some of those
Right.
joyful items. But
Sometimes
yeah,
tightening the belt can be a little painful, but hopefully it's just temporary. Thank you so much for your time this morning, Lawrence Sprung.
thank you.